The old house loomed before Maya Reeves, like a giant with creaking bones. Its paint was peeling, and the windows were darkened with age, casting a shadowy veil over the yard where overgrown weeds danced with the wind. She parked her bike on the cracked pavement and took a deep breath, steeling herself for the night ahead. At 16, babysitting was just a way to earn some extra cash, but the idea of spending hours in a strange, quiet house made her stomach churn slightly. Still, she pushed the uneasiness away and walked to the front door, where a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head glinted in the fading sunlight. The door swung open before she could knock, revealing a woman with kind eyes and an apologetic smile. "You must be Maya. Thank you for coming on such short notice. I hope they haven't scared you off yet." Maya shrugged, letting her casual demeanor take over. "Not at all. Just another night of babysitting." The woman chuckled lightly, but there was an edge of concern in her voice. "Well, just so you know, my son Owen and daughter Leela can be a bit imaginative. They've been playing a game they made up, but I'm sure you'll handle it just fine." Maya nodded and stepped inside, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath her feet. The house smelled of freshly baked cookies, and the warm light from the living room invited her in. There, she found Owen, a boy with bright eyes and an eager grin, and Lila, a small girl with dark curls that framed her innocent face. "Hi, I'm Maya," she said, forcing a smile as she knelt down to their level. "What do you like to do for fun?" Owen perked up, bouncing slightly on the couch. "We have a really cool game we want to show you. It's called the Shadow Man. You can only play it after dark." Maya raised an eyebrow, a mix of skepticism and amusement washing over her. "The Shadow Man. Sounds a little spooky." "It's not spooky," Lila chimed in, her voice soft yet firm. "It's fun. Just have to follow the rules." "Okay then, what are the rules?" Maya asked, crossing her arms, a playful smile creeping onto her lips. Owen leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You have to draw a door on the wall with chalk, and then you can't break the circle. You can't look behind you, and you have to keep playing, no matter what happens." Maya chuckled, brushing off the ridiculousness of it all. "Sounds easy enough. Let's get started." Owen scrambled to grab a piece of chalk from the coffee table, and Lila watched wide-eyed as he drew a crude door on the wall. Maya leaned against the couch, arms crossed, as the children chattered excitedly about the game. The atmosphere shifted subtly, a chill encroaching on the warmth of the room. But Maya brushed it aside, too caught up in their enthusiasm to notice. As dusk settled and shadows stretched across the room, the children took their places. Maya found herself sitting cross-legged on the floor, the chalk door glowing faintly in the dim light. Owen's eyes sparkled with excitement, while Lila's gaze flickered nervously to the corners of the room. "Okay, let's start," Owen declared, his voice filled with authority. "Lila, you go first." Lila took a deep breath, her tiny hands trembling slightly. "The Shadow Man comes when it's dark. He watches us. We have to be brave." Maya rolled her eyes, but a knot of unease began to twist in her stomach. "Right, be brave," she echoed, trying to sound encouraging. The game began, and the children chanted in unison, their voices rising and falling like a haunting lullaby. Maya watched, bemused, as they closed their eyes and swayed gently. The room felt almost too still, the laughter fading into an eerie silence. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from upstairs, causing Maya to jump. "What was that?" she asked, her heart racing. "It's part of the game," Owen insisted, his enthusiasm undeterred. "You can't stop playing." Maya hesitated, glancing at the chalk door. "I'll be right back. Just sit tight." Rising to her feet, she made her way toward the staircase. The floor creaked underfoot, each step amplifying her unease. She reached the top and peered into the hallway, the darkness swallowing the light from below. Shadows clung to the walls, shifting and stretching in a way that felt almost alive. "Hello?" she called, her voice echoing back at her. Silence answered. Maya stepped further into the hallway, drawn to a door that stood ajar at the end. As she approached, another sound, a soft whisper, slipped through the crack. She pushed the door open, revealing an empty room filled with dusty furniture. A chill swept through her and she shivered, wondering if she had imagined the noise. Just as she turned to head back, a sudden rush of cold air swept past her, making her hair stand on end. The door slammed shut behind her and she spun around, her heart pounding. "Guys!" she called out, panic creeping into her voice. "Is anyone there?" When she returned to the living room, her breath caught in her throat. The atmosphere had shifted entirely. Lila stood in the middle of the room, her small frame rigid and unmoving, eyes fixed on a shadow that crawled along the wall, twisting and writhing like a living thing. "Owen," Maya's voice wavered. "What's happening?" "He's here," Owen said, his voice low and serious. "You broke the circle. Now he's in." Maya felt the ground shift beneath her feet, her skepticism evaporating into fear. "What do you mean? It's in Shadow Man," Alila whispered, her voice trembling but strangely assured. The lights flickered, and the shadows stretched along the walls, fingers creeping closer to Maya. She felt a primal instinct to run, but something held her in place. The children were no longer playing. They were caught in a trance. Their eyes glazed over as they stared at the dark figure that loomed in the corners of the room. "Guys, this isn't funny," Maya shouted, her voice rising in desperation. "We need to stop this game." Owen shook his head, his expression eerily calm. "You can't stop playing. It's too late." Suddenly, the front door slammed shut with a thunderous bang, rattling the windows. Maya's heart raced as she realized the house was locked tight. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Follow the rules," Owen said, his tone devoid of the childlike excitement it had held moments ago. "We have to finish the game." Maya's mind raced as she recalled the chalk drawings on the wall. "What do I need to do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Draw the circle," Lila said, her voice hauntingly calm. "Complete the ritual." With no other choice, Maya grabbed the chalk and knelt on the floor, her hands shaking as she drew a circle around the chalk door. The shadows flickered, pulsing with a life of their own, and she felt the presence of something watching her, waiting for her to complete the final act. As she finished the circle, the air grew heavier, charged with an electric tension. Shadows danced around her, whispering secrets in a language she couldn't understand. "What do you want?" she called out, her voice echoing in the silence. "Play," a voice hissed, echoing from the shadows. "Play with us." Maya's heart raced as she felt the weight of their gaze. "I don't want to play anymore," she shouted, desperation spilling into her voice. But the shadows only laughed, a sound that sent chills down her spine. "Too late," Owen's voice echoed, now deeper, more sinister. "You invited him in." Maya felt a surge of panic. "No, I didn't mean to." The shadows closed in, wrapping around her like tendrils of darkness. She could feel the cold creeping into her bones, wrapping around her heart. "You have to believe," the voice whispered, seductive and sinister. "If you don't believe, he can't stay." Maya's mind raced. She thought of the stories she'd dismissed, the fears she'd laughed off. Maybe it wasn't just a game. Maybe the shadows were real, and the Shadow Man was here with them. With a sudden resolve, she straightened her back, staring into the darkness. "You're just a story," she whispered defiantly, her voice steady. "You're nothing but a figment of imagination." The shadows recoiled, as if struck. The laughter turned to screams echoing in agony. The coldness began to dissipate, and the house trembled as if caught in a storm. Maya could feel the weight of the shadows lifting, the presence of the Shadow Man waning. "Leave us," she shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "You're nothing." In that moment, the darkness shattered, and the house fell silent. The lights flickered back to life, illuminating the room once more. Maya gasped for breath, her heart racing as she turned to the children, who stood wide-eyed and trembling. "Did we win?" Ella asked, her voice small and fragile. Maya nodded, relief flooding through her. "I think so. I think we're safe." But as she turned toward the door, she froze. Standing in the corner of the room was a shadow darker and more defined than the rest. It loomed, watching her with eyes that glowed like embers, and Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "Who was the third kid you were playing with?" Shadow whispered, its voice a chilling echo of the past. Maya's heart dropped as she realized the truth. They had never truly escaped. The game was never over. As the parents returned home, the house settled into an uneasy calm. But Maya could still feel the shadow lurking, waiting, hungry for belief. And now, she was unsure if she had truly banished the Shadow Man or if he was simply biding his time, waiting for the next opportunity to play. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains, casting a soft glow across the small bathroom. Alina Hart stood by the sink, her toothbrush clutched tightly in her hand. The bristles met the paste with a familiar rhythm, and she gazed into the mirror, a habitual ritual. Today, however, something felt off. As she brushed, she noticed her reflection blinked a beat too late. It was subtle, a mere heartbeat of difference, but it caught her attention. Frowning, she paused, the toothbrush hovering midair. The reflection, she thought, was watching her, a glint of mischief in its eyes. Then, without her prompting, the lips of her mirror self curled into a smile. But Elena's own mouth remained unmoved. "Just stressed," she muttered, shaking her head as she resumed brushing. She finished, rinsed her mouth, and wiped her face with a towel. When she glanced back at the mirror, her reflection was already watching her walk in. A chill crept up her spine, but she dismissed it as a trick of the light, or her imagination playing tricks after the breakup. Elena had moved into this apartment to escape the echoes of a relationship gone sour, to reclaim her space, her identity. She was determined to rebuild herself, to find stability again. But the mirror, an old fixture in the unit, seemed to hold secrets of its own. The day rolled on, mundane and unremarkable. Work was a blur of numbers and reports, her mind often drifting back to that strange moment in the bathroom. It was easy to chalk up her discomfort to the stress of settling into a new job, a new life. When Jessie, her best friend, visited later that evening, Alina pushed the thought aside. Jessie was practical, a grounding force in Elena's life. They laughed over takeout, shared stories of their day, and yet, beneath the laughter, Elena felt a gnawing unease. "Something's off with that mirror, you know," she said, testing the waters. Jessie raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. It just feels like it watches me sometimes. It's like it's alive." Jessie chuckled, a sound that felt too loud in the quiet apartment. "You're just adjusting to everything. Mirrors don't watch people, Elle. They reflect." Alina nodded, but the doubt lingered in her mind. That night, as she prepared for bed, she caught her reflection's gaze once more. This time, it was different. The reflection didn't just mimic her movements, it seemed to anticipate them. She raised her right hand, and the reflection followed. Then she raised her left hand, and it mirrored her perfectly. But when she moved her hand in a random pattern, dipping down, then sweeping left, she was stunned to see her reflection hesitate, then follow. Every motion was perfectly timed, except for one. In that instant, she felt an icy grip around her heart. The reflection paused, then echoed a movement she had made, yet a flick of her wrist that she would perform later that night, as if it knew her actions before she did. The following days blurred together, each waking moment marked by the uncanny behavior of her reflection. It was no longer just a mirror image, it began to reveal the unspoken thoughts that churned in her mind. As she stood there one morning, staring into the glass, she noticed bruises forming on her reflection's arms, dark and mottled while. Her own skin remained unblemished. She gasped, recoiling from the mirror. The reflection's smile was wide, unsettlingly joyful, as if it were relishing in some dark secret. "Alina, are you okay?" Jessie asked, when she confided in her later that week. I think my reflection is trying to tell me something," Alina replied, her voice trembling. "Tell you what?" Jessie pressed, concern etched on her brow. "Things I don't know yet, things that haven't happened." Jessie frowned, skepticism creeping into her expression. "Maybe you should just cover the mirror, or, I don't know, get a new one. It sounds like it's messing with your head." But Alina couldn't bring herself to do it. Instead, she became obsessed, testing the limits of this bizarre phenomenon. She would stand in front of the glass, performing small acts of defiance. Sometimes she would stick out her tongue or make silly faces, and the reflection would respond in kind, mimicking her every move. It was a game, a twisted game that had turned her mirror into a stage for her anxieties. Yet, when she dared to act spontaneously, the reflection would twist her actions, as if it were learning, evolving. One night, after a particularly exhausting day, she stood before the mirror, her heart racing. She moved her hand in a circular motion, and the reflection followed. Then she bent down, pretending to tie her shoes, and found herself staring into its eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, half hoping for an answer. The reflection's smile faded momentarily, replaced by something darker. It blinked, and for a fleeting moment, Alina felt a wave of dread wash over her. There was a promise in its gaze, a lurking intent that sent her heart racing. Elena's dreams turned into nightmares, each one more vivid and terrifying than the last. She would wake, drenched in sweat, the image of her reflection's bruised arms burned into her mind. The more she tried to rationalize, the more the fabric of her reality unraveled. One evening, after a particularly vivid dream where she watched her reflection step out from the glass, she decided to confront it. With a hammer in hand, she approached the mirror, heart pounding. "I'm not afraid of you," she shouted, raising the hammer above her head. But before she could strike, she paused, breath hitching in her throat. The reflection stood still, its eyes locked onto hers, an unsettling calm radiating from its form. "Alina," it whispered, voice echoing as if it were coming from deep within the glass. "Why should I reflect you when I can become you?" In a moment of clarity, she dropped the hammer, the sound echoing against the tile floor. What was it that she feared most? Losing herself, or the reflection that sought to take her place? The next few days were a blur of desperation and confusion. She covered every reflective surface in her apartment, draping blankets over mirrors and avoiding glass at all costs. Yet, the reflection found ways to intrude. A puddle on the floor, the shiny surface of her phone everywhere she turned. It was there, watching, waiting. Then came the night when the reflection stopped mimicking altogether. Alina stood before the mirror, her breath fogging the glass, and felt the coldness seep into her bones. The reflection remained motionless, a haunting stillness that sent terror racing through her veins. "Stop this," she screamed, her voice cracking. "You're not real," but it was real. The reflection pressed its hand against the glass, palm flat, and for a moment Alina was transfixed. Without thinking, she stepped closer, heart racing. The coolness of the glass sent shivers down her spine as she reached out, fingers trembling. In that moment, she felt a pull, a magnetic force drawing her into the glass, and she hesitated. What lay on the other side? Would she find herself, or would she be consumed by the entity that had grown stronger with each passing day? Her breath caught as she made a decision. She stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the mirror. Darkness enveloped her, and she felt the world shift around her. She was no longer in her apartment. Instead, she found herself standing in a void, the reflection before her now a tangible form, stepping out of the glass. "Alina," it said, voice smooth and inviting. "Welcome to your true self." The reflection smiled, and for the first time, Alina saw her own eyes staring back at her cold, unblinking, filled with a hunger she had never known. "Let's take control, shall we?" And just as the reflection reached out, the door to her apartment swung open. Jessie stood there, her expression shifting from confusion to horror. "Alina," she cried. Alina turned, a smile spreading across her face, but her eyes remained unblinking, void of recognition. "Hey, Jessie," she said softly, a chill creeping into her voice. The reflection lingered in the background, watching, waiting. As Jessie stepped inside, the door clicked shut, and the mirror now a portal dimmed to a haunting stillness, the whispers of a fractured identity echoing through the silence. The last thing we see is the reflection, standing alone as the light flickers, a new life beginning in the shadows. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the remnants of Camp Echo. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, an intoxicating blend that beckoned Kayla Reed and her friends. They slipped through the rusted gate, laughter echoing in the stillness, stark contrast to the eerie silence of the abandoned camp. Kayla led the way, her heart racing not just from the thrill of trespassing, but from the weight of unspoken fears that clung to her like a second skin. "Come on, this place is just a bunch of old cabins," Mira called out, her voice bouncing off the decaying walls. She was the fearless one, the instigator, and tonight she had dared them all into the heart of the legend. "Everyone says it's haunted, but it's just stories to scare kids. Let's make our own." Tyson, trailing a few steps behind, shot Kayla a worried glance. He knew better than anyone the weight of loss that hung over her. Maybe we should stick to the bonfire," he said quietly, his voice barely rising above the rustle of leaves. Ghosts aren't just stories, Kayla. But Kayla brushed him off with a wave, her bravado masking the turmoil inside. She felt the familiar pang of guilt tighten her chest, a reminder of her brother's absence, of the summer they lost him. This was supposed to help her escape, if only for a night. As they wandered deeper into the camp, the sun slipped behind the trees, plunging them into twilight. The cracked wooden dock jutted out over Crescent Lake, its surface shimmering like a sheet of glass, reflecting the last moments of daylight. Kayla felt a pull toward the water, an inexplicable urge to dive in, to wash away the pain that clung to her. "Let's go for a swim," Mira shouted, already kicking off her shoes. "What's the worst that could happen? It's just a lake." "Yeah, a lake with a ghost," Tyson muttered, his voice laced with apprehension. "Remember what happened to that lifeguard?" Kayla's stomach twisted at the mention of the story. Evan Cole, the lifeguard who drowned trying to save a camper during a storm decades ago. Legend had it that his spirit lingered, watching over the water, waiting for someone to save. But Kayla dismissed the thought, pushing it aside as they gathered at the edge of the dock, the water lapping gently at the wood. "Don't be such a chicken, Ty. You're not scared, are you?" Mira teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief. She stepped closer to the edge, her feet dangling over the side, and Kayla felt a surge of adrenaline. "Fine, I'll go first," Kayla declared, her voice louder than she intended. She stripped down to her swimsuit, heart pounding, and leaped into the water, the cold enveloping her like a shroud. She surfaced, gasping, laughter spilling from her lips as she splashed her friends. But as she turned to look back, her laughter died on her lips. Mira was gone. "Mira," Kayla called, her voice trembling. The water rippled around her, the surface now eerily still. "Myra, where are you?" Tyson's face turned pale. "She was just here. She didn't swim out, did she?" Panic clawed at Kayla's throat as she scanned the lake, her heart racing. "Mira," she shouted again, but the only response was the soft lapping of the water against the dock. "Let's get out of here," Tyson urged, his voice shaky. "We need to find her." But before they could move, a glimmer caught Kayla's eye. On the shore, half buried in the sand, was Mira's phone, still recording. Kayla's breath caught in her throat as she waded to the edge, pulling the phone from the sand. The screen flickered with static, but the last few moments of video were clear. Mira, standing waist-deep in the water, laughing, then nothing but darkness. Kayla's heart raced as she glanced back at the lake. "We have to go in after her. She's in there, I know it." "No," Tyson shouted, grabbing her arm. "You can't just dive in. What if the stories are true?" Kayla shook her head, determination fueling her. "I can't leave her, Ty. We can't just abandon her." With a deep breath, she plunged back into the water, fighting against the rising tide of fear. She swam deeper, the cold wrapping around her like a vice. She called out for Mira, her voice echoing in the depths, but the only reply was the whisper of the waves. Then she felt it, a presence, a weight shifting beneath her, something alive and ancient. Kayla's heart raced as she looked down, and there he was, a figure suspended just beneath the surface, watching her with hollow eyes. "Evan," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Is that you?" For a moment the water stilled, and she felt a rush of cold envelop her. She couldn't tell if it was fear or something else. Suddenly the surface erupted as Evan lunged toward her, his hand reaching out. "Help me," he cried, but his voice was a distant echo, frayed around the edges. "I have to save you," Kayla gasped, her instincts screaming at her to swim back to the surface, but something inside her compelled her to stay. "You don't have to save anyone," she shouted, desperation lacing her voice. "You're not a lifeguard anymore, let go." But Evan's eyes were filled with sorrow, a reflection of her own grief. He didn't see her, not really. He saw the lake, saw the camper he failed to save, the weight of responsibility binding him to this place. She felt the tug of the past, the pull of his guilt. In that moment, a memory surged to the forefront of her mind the night her brother had drowned. She had been the one to let him go. She had been too busy, too careless. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears mingling with the lake water. "I'm so sorry." Evan's expression shifted, confusion clouding his features. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice wavering. "Someone has to drown. It's the only way." "No!" Kayla cried, her heart racing. "It doesn't have to be that way. You can let go. You can forgive yourself." But his grip tightened, pulling her deeper, and she felt the weight of the lake pressing down on her. She grasped for a lifeline, for something to anchor her in this chaos. "You're not a killer, Evan. You're a boy who made a mistake. You can forgive yourself." Suddenly, the water began to churn around them, a violent whirlpool forming as Evan's anguish surged. Kayla fought against the current, her lungs burning, but she wouldn't give up. "You're not alone," she screamed, her voice cutting through the tumult. "I understand. I'm lost too." In that moment, something shifted. The water stilled and Evan's expression softened, the pain in his eyes flickering like a dying flame. I tried to save them," he whispered, the realization dawning on him. "I didn't want anyone to drown." Kayla reached for him, her fingers brushing against his. "You can let go, Evan. You don't have to carry this burden anymore." Time stretched like the shadows cast by the fading sun, and for the first time, she saw him, truly saw him, not as a ghost, but as a boy trapped in his own sorrow. In that moment of connection, she felt the weight of her own guilt lift, if only slightly. "I forgive you," she said, her voice a soothing balm. "You need to forgive yourself." And as if her words had unlocked something deep within him, the water around them began to shimmer, the darkness receding. Evan hesitated, caught between two worlds, and for a heartbeat, Kayla thought he might finally break free. But then, a wave surged, dragging her down into the depths. She gasped for breath, struggling against the pull of the lake, the darkness closing in around her. "Kayla." A distant voice called, but it faded into the abyss. With one last desperate push, she broke through the surface, gasping for air, but the dock was empty. The lake was still, a deceptive calm settling over the water. "Ty," she called, her voice trembling. But the only reply was the soft lapping of waves against the shore. She stumbled onto the dock, breathless and disoriented. The moon hung high above, casting a silvery glow over the water, but her friends were nowhere in sight. Fear twisted in her gut as she scanned the darkened trees, the shadows growing longer. "Myra?" she whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. "Tyson? Where are you?" But the only answer was silence, a thick, oppressive silence that wrapped around her like a shroud. The weight of the lake bore down on her, the ghost of Evan still lingering in the depths. And then, from the corner of her eye, she saw it. A figure standing waist-deep in the water, staring toward the shore. The moonlight glinted off the surface, illuminating the familiar silhouette, the same boy who had once tried to save a life. Kayla's heart raced as she took a step back, the realization crashing over her. Evan was still there, waiting, bound to the lake, forever trapped in his cycle of guilt. And as she turned to run, the whispers of the woods surrounded her, echoing the legends she had dared to dismiss. The lake was alive, and it was hungry. Even as she fled, the shadows seemed to shift, and she knew she would never truly escape. The weight of loss would follow her. The echoes of her frenza remind her that some burdens are never meant to be carried alone. And in the distance, the figure in the water remained, waiting for the next thrill-seeker to approach, ready to drag them into the depths of their own despair. The legend was real, and the lake was always watching, always waiting. The night was thick with silence, the kind that wrapped around Ryan Morales like a shroud. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows swirling in the corners of his room. It had been months since the accident, months since the world had fractured and left him alone in the jagged aftermath of grief. He turned his head toward the nightstand where his phone lay, its screen dark and still, a silent sentinel of his solitude. Then, as if summoned by some unseen force, his phone buzzed, slicing through the oppressive quiet. Ryan's heart lurched. He glanced at the screen and his breath caught in his throat. The number was familiar to Rick's old number, the one he had memorized long before Derek had needed it. It had been disconnected for months, a lifeline severed too soon. His fingers trembled as he reached for it. The message glowed in the dim light. "What is the worst thing about a broken pencil?" Ryan's heart raced, a mix of disbelief and a flicker of hope igniting inside him. It was an old joke one Derek had always told him when they were kids. It's pointless. He could almost hear Derek's laughter, warm and full of life. Without thinking, he typed back, "You're back from the dead to tell dad jokes." The reply came almost instantly. "Only the best for you, little bro. You've been too serious lately." A smile broke through Ryan's somber expression, He found himself responding, pouring out words he hadn't said in months. The conversation flowed easily, like a river breaking through a dam. They reminisced about their childhood, the silly pranks they played, and the dreams they once shared. For those brief moments, Ryan felt a weight lifted, as if Derek were sitting beside him, bringing life back into a world that had grown so dull. But as the night deepened, the messages shifted. The warmth faded, replaced by an unsettling chill. Remember when we used to sneak into Dad's study? There's something he never wanted you to find. Ryan's stomach twisted, a knot of unease tightening. They had raided their father's study once, searching for hidden treasures and secrets, but had found only dusty old books and a locked drawer. "What do you mean?" he typed, his fingers hesitating over the screen. "Things aren't always what they seem, Ree. You need to dig deeper. I was trying to protect you." The comfort he had felt moments ago was replaced by a creeping dread. Who was sending these messages? Was it really Derek or something else entirely? Ryan felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He set the phone down, the glow of the screen fading into darkness, but sleep eluded him. He tossed and turned, the words echoing in his mind, gnawing at him like a persistent itch. Days passed, and the messages continued. Each one began innocently enough, but they grew increasingly ominous. Derek's voice, if it was Derek, spoke of shadows lurking in their family's past, of their father's disappearance 10 years ago, a topic that had always been shrouded in silence. Dad didn't just leave Ryan. He was involved in something dangerous, was trying to figure it out. Ryan felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had never thought much about his father's absence. It was easier to accept the narrative his mother had crafted an accident, a tragic twist of fate. But Derek's words twisted that narrative, unraveling threads he had long avoided. He needed to talk to someone, but he felt trapped in a web of secrets, unable to confide in his mother, who had grown more distant since the accident. Jaden, his tech-savvy friend, was the only one he could trust. They met in the school library, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Ryan leaned in, his voice low. "I'm getting these texts from Derek's old number. I think there's something more to it. Can you help me trace where they're coming from?" Jaden raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched on his face. "You're sure it's not just a prank? I mean, you know how people can be. I know it sounds crazy, but you have to believe me. It's not just jokes anymore. There's something wrong. I think Derek was trying to tell me something before he died." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. "Right, let's see what we can do." Jaden pulled out his laptop, fingers flying over the keys as he dug into the digital realm. Minutes turned into hours as they scoured the data, but each attempt led to a dead end. The number was disconnected, yet the messages kept coming as if they were slipping through the cracks of reality. After several days of relentless digging, Jaden finally turned to Ryan, his face pale. "I don't know how to explain this, but the texts are coming from a location that shouldn't exist. It's like they're being sent from a dead zone somewhere off the grid." "What does that mean?" Ryan's heart raced, dread pooling in his stomach. "It means someone or something is using that number to send these messages. And it's not just a prank. It's like it's trying to reach you." As the days turned into a blur of confusion and fear, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that Derek was trying to guide him, to warn him. He began searching through Derek's belongings, hoping to find something that would elucidate the chaos consuming him. It felt like a desperate act, digging through the remnants of a life that had been all but erased. In Derek's room, time felt suspended. The air was thick with memories, and the lingering scent of old cologne hung in the air like a ghost. Ryan rifled through drawers, his heart pounding as he unearthed old notebooks, dusty with neglect. Among them, he found a flash drive tucked away in a hidden compartment beneath the bed. It was small and unassuming, but the weight of it felt monumental. He plugged it into his laptop, heart racing as files unfurled before him. Recordings. Journal entries and messages Derek had never shared. The recordings were disjointed, filled with snippets of conversations, frantic breaths, and whispers of things left unsaid. As Ryan listened, he felt a chill creep down his spine. Derek had been digging into their father's past, uncovering a web of deceit that connected their family to something darker than he could have imagined. "Mom never wanted you to know," one recording said, Derek's voice strained. "But I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this from you. I found something that could change everything. If anything happens to me, you have to finish what I started." Ryan's breath quickened, panic rising as he realized the implications of Derek's words. He scrolled through the files, feeling a sense of urgency. But as he did, his phone buzzed on the table, illuminating the darkness. He hesitated, dread pooling in his stomach as he picked it up. The message was from Derek's number, but the tone was different, demanding, hostile. "Stop digging, Ryan. You don't understand what you're getting into. Leave it alone. You're not ready for this." His heart raced. The comforting presence he had felt was gone, replaced by something sinister. Ryan's fingers shook as he typed back, "What do you want from me? I'm just trying to understand." The reply came quickly. "You need to let me go. You're not safe. They're coming for you too." The room felt stifling, the walls closing in around him. Ryan's mind raced as he processed the implications. What had Derek uncovered? What danger lay beneath the surface of their family's history? He felt trapped in a nightmare, and the only way out seemed to be through the very secrets that had brought him here. Days turned into sleepless nights as Ryan wrestled with the truth. He had to confront his mother, to demand answers, but the thought of it filled him with dread. Emily Morales was a fortress of repression, her emotions locked away behind walls built from years of silence. Whenever Derek was mentioned, she would change the subject, her gaze turning distant, as if she were protecting someone. Finally, one evening, he confronted her. "Mom, I need to know what happened to Dad. What did Derek find before he died? Why are you so afraid to talk about it?" Emily's expression shifted, her eyes clouding over with pain. "Ryan, please," he shouted, frustration boiling over. "I'm not a kid anymore. I deserve to know the truth." Her silence spoke volumes, and in that moment Ryan saw the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. "Your brother was trying to protect you. There are things you don't understand, things I can't explain. Then help me understand. I'm getting messages from Derek's phone, and they're telling me he was looking into Dad's disappearance. I need to know if it's true." Her gaze fell to the floor, and for the first time since Derek's death, Ryan saw tears glistening in her eyes. "It's complicated, Ryan. Your father was involved in something dangerous, and Derek, he was too curious for his own good. Mom, please. I need to know what happened to him." Emily took a deep breath, her voice barely a whisper. "Derek was trying to find out what really happened to your father. He thought he could uncover the truth, but what?" Ryan pressed, desperation clawing at him. But he was getting too close. "I didn't want him to get hurt." And now her voice trailed off, a shadow of regret passing over her features. Ryan felt the walls closing in, the weight of their family's secrets pressing down on him. He turned away, anger and confusion swirling inside him. He had to know the truth, even if it meant confronting the darkness that had enveloped his family. That night he returned to Derek's room, heart pounding as he opened the flash drive again. He needed to uncover everything Derek had found. The recordings played back, revealing snippets of conversations with people Derek had reached out to, whispers of danger lurking just beneath the surface. Faint revelations sent shivers down Ryan's spine, but he pressed on, driven by a need to understand. Then, buried deep within the files, he found a final recording, Derek's voice shaky, filled with urgency. "If you're hearing this, it means I've uncovered something significant. I was meeting someone who knows the truth about Dad. I don't know if I can trust them, but I need to find out. If something happens to me, you have to finish what I started. Don't let them silence you." Ryan felt a jolt of fear. Who was Derek meeting? What had he uncovered? The text messages had been warning him, urging him to stop, but he couldn't turn back now. He was too deep, and the truth was calling to him like a siren's song. As he stared at the screen, a new message appeared, and his heart dropped. "Ryan, you need to stop. It's not safe. They're coming for you." His breath